Well, welcome to a slightly different kind of explainer today. Most of us only really know the world by daylight. But what exactly happens when the sun finally drops, the doors lock, and the rest of the city just goes to sleep? Today we're stepping into the quiet, and honestly, the often deeply unsettling reality of the midnight vigil. We're going to take a really close look at the spaces that stay awake when they probably shouldn't, and we'll dive into the psychology of the people who are actually paid to guard them.
So our whole focus today is grounded in this one core idea: disturbing true stories from night shift workers. And to be clear, we aren't just talking about being a little tired at your desk, right? We are unpacking the profound psychological isolation and the genuinely eerie encounters that happen when human beings operate completely outside of their natural evolutionary clock. It's a fascinating and, sometimes terrifying dive into what the human brain does when it's left completely alone in the dark.
Section 1. The midnight vigil begins. Think about the mundane act of clocking into work for a second. For a day shift worker, it's just routine. But for the night worker, it kicks off this chronological descent into total isolation. At 11 p.m., the shift begins, and you still feel somewhat connected to the familiar evening world. But by 2 a.m., you hit peak isolation. The traffic outside is completely stopped. Then, at 4 a.m., we enter what workers pretty much universally call the witching hour. This is the exact point where biology and reality start to blur. And finally, at 6 a.m., dawn breaks. So this isn't just a schedule, it's literally a map of intense psychological endurance.
Working at night forces the human body into a literal vigil. It's a period of keeping awake during the time usually spent asleep. You are actively fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming. Your brain is desperately flooding your entire system with melatonin, just screaming at you to power down and sleep. But you have to remain upright, alert, and watching. This intense biological friction sets the perfect stage for absolutely everything unsettling that follows.
Section 2. Isolation in liminal spaces.
To really understand the night shift, you have to understand the physical environment. A daytime shift is bustling, noisy, safe, and entirely predictable. You know exactly what a supermarket or a hospital corridor is supposed to look and sound like at 2 p.m. But the night shift? Man, it is empty, silent, profoundly isolated, and highly unpredictable. It's the exact same physical location, but it yields a drastically different and often highly disturbing experience simply because the entire context of daytime humanity has been totally removed. Which actually brings us to a really fascinating architectural and psychological concept, the liminal space. This is a transitional or empty physical space that feels deeply eerie or unsettling outside of its normal context. Think of an empty retail aisle, a deserted factory floor, or an underground parking garage. These everyday environments simply weren't designed to be empty, and when they are, our brains intuitively sense that something is fundamentally wrong. The environment itself suddenly feels incredibly threatening.
It basically creates a perfect psychological storm. You've got the harsh, unblinking hum of fluorescent lighting casting these long, weird shadows. You have a silence so deep you can actually hear the buildings settling around you. And of course, you have utter emptiness. Combine all of those environmental triggers with extreme sleep deprivation, and you create a deeply atmospheric, highly taxing psychological pressure cooker for the worker.
Section 3. The Witching Hour Chronicles. Okay, so this is where the empty environment and the exhausted mind finally collide. This is where the most disturbing true stories actually occur. First up, we see isolation-induced hallucinations. Look, when you are starved of normal sensory input, no talking, no daylight, no movement, and you are severely sleep-deprived, the human brain absolutely hates the void. So what does it do? It starts to manufacture its own reality to fill it. Workers frequently report seeing shadowy figures dart out of the corners of their eyes or hearing their names whispered over the hum of the air conditioning. It's essentially a biological misfire, but in the dead of night, it feels incredibly real and absolutely terrifying.
But hey, physical isolation doesn't always mean total solitude. The people wandering a 24-hour gas station or a deserted hotel lobby at 3:30 a.m. are often just not operating on the same frequency as the daytime crowd. Honestly, a brightly lit convenience store at 3 a.m. feels like stepping onto a completely different planet. These rare interactions are wildly unpredictable. Night workers frequently recount stories of midnight wanderers who speak in strange non sequiturs, stand unnervingly still, or just carry a deeply unsettling aura that instantly triggers the worker's fight-or-flight response.
So, the crucial point here is that when the noise, the crowds, and the pure logic of the daytime world are completely stripped away, what remains? Unexplained phenomena. Doors that seemingly latch themselves. Heavy footsteps on the floor above when literally no one else is clocked in. Security cameras capturing glitches that look just a bit too human. Workers are routinely left confronting events that completely defy any rational explanation.
Section 4. Surviving the night shift. So, how does a person actually process these eerie chronicles night after night? Well, surviving the shift requires intense mental resilience. Step 1 is simply enduring that deep isolation without losing your grip on reality. Step 2 is navigating the unexplained, basically learning to aggressively brush off the shadows and the strange noises as just part of the job. But Step 3? Step 3 is perhaps the most jarring, facing the disorienting break of dawn. After spending 8 hours in a dark, silent, liminal space, stepping out into the bright, noisy morning sun feels almost alien. It's a sudden, harsh snapback to reality, contrasting the peak darkness with a profound, almost bizarre sense of relief. Which leaves us with a final question for you. Will you ever look at an empty, brightly lit space at night the exact same way again? The next time you drive past an illuminated, empty storefront at 3 a.m., or walk down a deserted, quiet hallway, remember the vigil happening inside. Remember the psychological weight of that silence. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.